Good afternoon. I'm going to talk about duality again because duality was critical. Seeming duality, reconciling duality, was critical in my spiritual inquiry, my spiritual path. So I'd like to spend some more time with some other looks at it, some other takes. I call this the paradigm of paradox. And I'm quite fond of the word paradigm. I guess it's because of my political science background. And usually I felt at the time that when everybody used paradigm, it was a way to separate, to appeal to a particular audience of their peers, and the use of paradigm was one of the many linguistic constructs that they would throw up, wittingly or unwittingly, who knows, deliberately or undeliberately. This was the case. Maybe it was the jargon, the language, and so somehow if we embrace the language of the discipline, perhaps it seems that we're more knowledgeable. But as I mentioned before, the mark of a great mind, a great scholar, and great communicator is to be able to communicate the specifics of their discipline without hiding behind the nomenclature. Okay, so I'm using paradigm, so let's not hide behind that. I'm using paradigm in the simplest sense. It's from the Greek. As 20% or 30% of the English lexicon derives from Greek. It simply means pattern, example, sample, represent, expose to, show, point out. But I want to give you an example of a little more obtuse language. Merriam-Webster, a dictionary that I very much respect and use always, says that to a philosophical and theoretical framework of scientific school or discipline within which theories, laws, and generalizations and the experiment performed in support of them are formulated. But more simply, a philosophical and theoretical framework of any kind. Just a framework, a way to talk about something. So I'm using it here because the biggest paradox for me was definitely reconciling these dualities. And let me give you an example. The example that was with me, that I used in my wrestling. Free will or destiny, preordained, fate. Well, I learned to, in the process of reconciliation of dualities, I learned to start looking at diametrically opposed, the opposites, free will and fate, destiny, preordination. Yes, opposites. And I learned that what was necessary for me, the process of elasticizing, stretching the mind, was to listen to one. Let's start with free will, because I always like to think that free will is a concept that we can embrace. But free will, and I look at free will and say, certainly, yes, the universe is run by free will. Free will is the paradigm of importance. On the other hand, I looked at destiny and fate, preordained outcome. And I seem emphatic and sincere embracing of free will. I embrace the opposite. Yes, indeed, life is determined by fate and destiny, karma. And I started to try to entertain these opposites at the same time, because it seemed to me the secret of resolving apparent duality was to see them as the same. And it was helpful to start picturing a circle. I like the image of a circle again, 360 degrees. Well, it's one circle, one truth, one reality, with across the diameter of the circle, 180 degrees, separating opposites, was on the range of degrees on a circle. And each degree was no less so than the one preceding or the one after. The same. I want to go back to the sublime abilities. Yesterday we talked about Raja Yoga leading to joy, Bhakti Yoga, love and kindness, Karma Yoga leading to compassion through selfless action, and the one that chose me, I guess is a better way to put it, Ajna, the path of knowledge transformed to wisdom through the use of reason. Now, it's really interesting about this path because you use your mind as a tool, which I've never wanted to dismiss as anything else but a useful tool. And that's gotten in the way somehow of me mastering the mind and finding the complete stillness and the quiet and even the clarity that Raja Yoga offers. But so that's the four paths, the four yoga from Vedanta, from Hindu Vedanta tradition. Bhagavad Gita uses a little bit different words, but they talk about essentially the same four paths. So there's a long tradition of this kind of way to look at it, and in my own experience, does nothing but validate the ancient sages. So jhana yoga is through the study of scriptures, the dharmas, sutras, reading about great adepts, masters of the past, and using that reason, that beautiful tool that I've never wanted to cavalierly discard. That's still a work in progress. But the difficulty in the jhana yoga is that, or being a jhana yogi, is that you use your reason to get to a point where it's no longer useful, where it falls by the wayside. But it takes you to that point without reason, without contemplation, you'll never get to the point where you see that your reason has taken you as far as it could. So this was my propensity, this was my tendency as a person that liked to use the mind. And recognizing that we should use all the tools in our arsenal, shouldn't we? Why so casually discard something as beautiful and as useful as the mind can be? So the 4 yogic paths led to different concepts, different understandings on the way of methods or states of mind that will advance your spiritual inquiry, advance you along the path. And equanimity is what really resonated with me. And especially as I started to understand that equanimity was a result of reconciling, of solving the paradigm of paradox or duality, seeming duality. Inherently knowing that there was only one all-encompassing. And having known that if Stephen Hawking really wanted to work on his theory of everything, that he needed to understand that the only thing that's everything is nothing. And nothing is the only thing that's everything. Another duality. But this is a key duality because only in understanding that everything is nothing and nothing is everything. On understanding that, you understand that even though everything that you see is an illusion, that life is an illusion, it does not excuse you from full engagement, full participation. Not only engagement and participation, but embracing life. Embracing life as it finds you. It's easy, I think, to me, it's easy to cloister, to become a monk, to join a temple, and they're working 24/7 and you're surrounded by only people, no distractions, only people that are keeping this alive, who cherish this effort that you're putting out to create an environment where you're safe and fed and protected from the participant in the world. But I chose to be a monk without a robe. In other words, engage in embracing life without expectations, without trying to change people or things. Acceptance was key. Acceptance to the way things were. Acceptance to the condition I found myself in, the way that I saw and felt life come to me. And I always understood that I was never intended to go towards life. I was always intended to witness and let life come to me. To be a spirit of being, not a spirit of doing. Bhakti Yoga, devotion, love, and kindness. All you have to do for Bhakti Yoga is surrender. Give it up. You can find love and kindness by being loved and kindness. So not a lot of contemplation, but incredible selflessness of just surrendering. It's really a test of faith that you're willing or that you're even able to surrender so completely. Karma yoga, selfless action with seva. The idea of seva is the Sanskrit word for doing work for others without expectations, period. No expectations. No expectations of any kind. Selfless action. And practice seva. Raja Yoga is that battle to conquer the mind, to subjugate the mind so that you can experience quiet stillness. And from in the quiet and stillness comes clarity. And from clarity, from calmness and stillness and clarity comes peace, which morphs into joy, which again morphs into bliss, and culminating in ecstasy. I've mentioned before that bits of bliss serve me well. I can't stay in that state of mind and maintain my physical presence. Ecstasy is something I'm looking forward to. It's a state when I'm released this time from this shell. Then I can dare tread in ecstasy. I can embrace it. In fact, it will become all that I am. So going back to duality. The most interesting thing, I've chosen the path of reason. Reason to a point where, as I mentioned, reason no longer works or is no longer needed, it falls by the wayside. But my reconciliation of dualities didn't come through my spiritual inquiry, the path, my jhana yogi path. It came through the 3-day or 2-day, 2.5-day experience I had of abiding awakening. And it was the first part of this process. First part. And the solution, or the reality, I don't know what to call it, of this puzzle of duality that my reason has wrestled with ad infinitum came spontaneously. All of a sudden, it didn't stretch the mind. It didn't even make pause of a thread of doubt. Opposites are ultimately the same. A duality is an illusion. It doesn't exist. And I didn't go through a process of reasoning. I didn't go through a process of reading the dharmas and the scriptures and all the other things that have taken me so far. I simply accepted. In fact, it was deeper than accepting. I knew I was experiencing it. And this was my aha moment. And when it sunk in, I laughed the big belly laugh. my buddy Nilafo, his laugh from the gut and just came out. Laugh. I don't know, it seemed like hours, but temporal time was no longer part of what I was going through. I was on the universal time clock or something, you know. However, time is ultimately really measured. But laughter. I was laughing at myself, I was laughing at everything because it was so obvious. Oh, it's like the elephant in the room that nobody talks about. But suddenly you see the elephant. And you can't avoid talking about it. But I just knew on a fundamental, gut, intrinsic, spiritual level that this was so. The reconciliation of duality, which I'd spent so many hours wrestling with. Even when I knew what was to be true, or I thought I knew what turned out to be true. It wasn't the knowing, the grasping, the understanding that I experienced spontaneously. And then after this laughter, tears. I mean violent tears. Tears to the point of wailing and moaning. Be crying my ignorance. Be crying the time that I thought I had lost, not understanding that there's no such thing as losing time. You can't measure time because it's infinite. So you can't lose it or gain it. There's no shortcuts. But still, bemoaning. And a lot of the suffering, the condition of man, the suffering from not seeing that dualities are false, to not seeing the oneness, to spend a life striving to accomplish things. The doing that we always talk about, that 20th and 21st century man and woman have focused on. But it was the internal spiritual work that I knew. But I was also crying because what I knew was validated by my experience of reality. And then the state of mind that came next was even more peculiar, because then I was belly laughing and crying, laughing and weeping at the same time. And this was more of a feeling of relief. My struggles seemed to be over. But I would find out that as long as we're breathing, there's more struggles. And we must struggle to gain the other three sublime abilities. If I was experiencing equanimity, and equanimity, by the way, only means the resolution of duality, the paradox. The paradigm of paradox was solved. That's in the state of mind that you have, that you're the same in the face of whatever life brings to you. You keep the same composure. The recognition of the truth that there's only the moment. You ask someone to show me the past. Can't do it. Some people claim to see the future. Equally simply undoable. You could see trends. Maybe you could have expectations, projections. Because the future is just as elusive as the past, because it doesn't exist until it happens. The past happened. The future is yet to happen. But this moment is all there is. So this was probably the biggest revelation, breakthrough for my abiding enlightenment, was resolving this. But as I said, we need to still work on the three others. Compassion, that's the path of the karmic yoga, the karma yoga. And remember, his rigorous self-evaluation, rigorous self-searching. And I practice this too as part of my jhana yoga. So I was familiar with this, the effort that it took. And the reward for seva, selfless service, is compassion. And it's from compassion that's motivating me to share with you, to put myself out there for anyone that's interested. It's through compassion. Bhakti yoga is loving kindness, but the key is surrender. And surrender for me had two different phases, and who knows, there may be a third. And the fourth one for me, the Raja yoga. This is where the concept of Zen most commonly falls. The quieting, the conquering, the quieting of the mind, the stillness with the ability to control the thoughts. And in this state of silence comes clarity. And your reward, if you need one, for stillness, quietness, and clarity is peace. And peace morphs into joy. And we went through the rest. Joy to bliss to ecstasy. Now, for me, that's a work in progress. And probably because of my critical judgment, always judging, it's something that is a work in progress on my part. I still catch myself doing it. And I don't know when I'm going to buy into that I will ultimately be able to quiet my mind. Right now I've tamed it, but to quiet to the point that there's no thoughts inside. When I meditate, most of the time quite active, but having dismissed anything here to entertainment purposes only, it's easy to ignore. Music helps. But clarity is again a work in progress. So this last, but you need to acquire all four. So what I'm saying is, our work is never really done. Our work is never really done. And after we leave this, after we're, the goal, my goal has been to get to the state where I don't have to incarnate again in a human vessel. It wasn't to reach any destination. It was that I didn't have to come back and do this as a human being again in this shell. That I was free to continue working on the spiral, the infinite spiral, to continue my work on another level without this material body. But I wanted to share in the process of this, after the aha moment, which was the reconciliation of dualities into non-duality, all is one. There's only one. Everything else is an illusion, including ourselves. Then I had a little glimpse of reincarnation, lifetimes past, and I was really distanced myself. I just kind of witnessed, because that was to show me that I'd been at this a long time. Not to celebrate any particular achievement or any particular title or any particular... In fact, what I experienced mostly was overwhelming ordinariness, which pleased me greatly, because I appreciate the beauty of ordinariness. And I understand what extraordinary ordinariness really entails. And something that it's so important that you wouldn't think I would forget, but my experience in the Library of Alexandria, where bookshelves, tall bookshelves, hundreds of feet high, just keep coming as fast as they could, dumping the books and the knowledge that I was absorbing everything. And with the understanding that it wasn't that I certainly don't have the ability to know everything. I can't solve Stephen Hawking's theory of everything, except suggest that it lies in understanding nothingness. But what I was shown is that when I need to, I'll know when I need to know, and the rest of the time, let it go. So, within this spontaneous reconciliation, rather than reason, I was able to really understand what I value so much: equanimity, the ability to accept life as it is, to accept all those around us as they are, everything and everyone, with no desire, need to change anyone or anything.